Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Arts and Lifestyles Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions, and it's time for another musical exploration on Danny and Tim's music scene. Always fun, and even though it involves a little bit of tragedy this time around with the passing of Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush, we certainly get to talk and reflect about his career, and there's always two sides to any musical joy or famous band, and some people really appreciate it, and some people don't necessarily appreciate certain bands, but just about everybody appreciated the fine musicianship of Neil Peart. We'll talk about that, talk about a lot of great local shows and some different influences in the musical scene and different musical styles across the board. It's what we always do on Danny and Tim's music scene. It's always fun. It's always eclectic. It always gives you a heads up to some great music in this area and shows over the next week or 10 days or into the future that you can catch up on, and not on this particular edition. We often talk about shows that have recently been in Kansas City. We'll be looking ahead most of the time, but first up, we'll reflect on Rush and Neil Peart and his impact on drumming and the music scene, as well as he passed at the age of 67. So lots to cover, as usual, with Timothy Finn from In Kansas City Magazine. You can hear him on 90.9 The Bridge, and you can hear him right here at Danny Clinkscale's Reasonably Irreverent podcast on Danny and Tim's music scene every other Wednesday. We're rock and rollin' next. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300.
Hey guys, it's Brian Haney, voice of the Jayhawks, and Matt Llewellyn from the 23rd Street Brewery. Matt, I've got a bunch of buddies coming over to watch the big game, and I need some ideas on what to cook.
Hey, let me handle it, Brian.
You're going to come over and cook for us?
For you? Maybe. But you should just let 23rd Street Brewery cater it. We could bring a big pan of Bill Self mac and cheese, wings, veggies, naked nachos, and anything else you might want.
Great. Well, you want to stick around and watch the game?
No, I've got to get back to the brewery and watch it on the big screen.
The place to get great catering and watch all the games, the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Tim, the musical world suffered a big loss over the last few days with the death of Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush. He had brain cancer and had to have suffering for it for a while, and Rush had to shut down a couple of years ago. Highly respected drummer, but interestingly enough, Peart. I always called him Neil Peart. I heard it called Neil Peart a million times. Neil Peart's the real thing. I guess the guy was gracious enough not to make a big deal about it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I'd heard it pronounced Peart over the last couple of days, so I went on Google and found a video. It looks like it's from a movie that I know nothing about. It's really short, like 10-second video, but Paul Rudd's in it with another guy, and they're talking to Rush, and they're sort of making fun of Neil Peart's name, pronouncing it with his French accent, Peart, Neil Peart, and he's going, no, it's just Peart, just leave it at Peart. So I'll take his word for it. He wasn't kind of a no-nonsense guy. I don't think he was joking. He was, the thing that I noticed as soon as news of his death broke was how quickly people responded and how many on social media and how many of those people were musicians, especially drummers, and some of them were jazz drummers, some were rock drummers, just from all over the world, but also in Kansas City. I know some people who I would not have thought would have been Rush fans, and a lot of them weren't, but they knew about Neil Peart. They'd listened to him. Some of them had studied him, listened to him just to pick up some of his techniques and some of the things he did and the choices he made and how he added to a song and a composition. And he was just apparently someone if you wanted to consider yourself a serious and devoted drummer, you needed to listen to, be aware of, and read about, and just find out how he got from where he started to where he was, because he was as influential as any drummer I can think of. And a lot of the great drummers in the rock world looked up to him and were really sad when they heard about his death.
And one of the things that I know that I saw, is the fact that, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Not everybody loved Rush's music for various reasons. We'll get into that in a second. But the three people put out an incredible sound with just the three people, and tremendous musicianship, and then live to recreate what sounds like almost a studio band. You would call some people a studio band, some people a live band, but that kind of musicianship, and he was at the heart of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they sounded like an orchestra at some point. I saw them live 4 times, and I was one of those people who didn't own any of their records. I knew some of their music from the radio. Of course, Tom Sawyer was a staple of FM radio when it came out, and I liked that song. And there were a couple other songs that they'd play when I saw them live that I recognized. But they had just a sound. The sound was theirs and theirs alone. You never confused them with anyone, and no one ever tried to sound like them, because you really couldn't. They were a trio that sounded like a band twice its size on record, and they also managed to pull that off live, which was really impressive, which is why I went to see them as much as I could, because it was always a spectacle, visually and otherwise. And he was at the center of it. I pulled up this quote that I put on Facebook from Stuart Copeland, who's another amazing drummer, who was one of those who's looking up to Neil Peart. And he said about him, he is the most air drum two drummer of all time. Neil pushes that band, which has a lot of musicality, a lot of ideas crammed into every 8 bars, but he keeps the throb, which is the most important thing. And it is, like, I noticed that about him and about their music. If you listen to him, you could feel like the very primitive, basic groove upon which they built everything else, and that music went everywhere. But you could always find it, and he always made sure that he was in some way establishing it and maintaining it. And for all that he did, that was a feat in itself.
Well, the other part of it is, the rhythm section for a band is there's the drummer and the bass player, but this was like Geddy Lee kind of played lead bass. I mean, he was a very, very elaborate bass player.
Like John Entwistle.
Yeah, right. And he wasn't just keeping the beat or anything else. And so that tandem has to be in sync when the bass player is playing what would be considered sort of flashy bass.
Right. I saw a documentary on them within the last 6 months, and it was interesting that talking about how they're so intent on being so progressive and building these grandiose ideas, and how what it did in the studio to get to the point where they were satisfied that they were executing the ideas that they had in their head, and just how difficult it was, and to put a strain on the band, because at that point, like, are we trying to outthink ourselves? But they obviously didn't want to be just an average rock band on FM radio. They wanted to do something extraordinary. And I think their diehard fans would tell you with every record they did, because I don't know too many Rush fans who dislike an album. They obviously like some a lot more than others, but for the most part feel like whatever it was they attempted to accomplish or execute, they managed to do it by the time they finished the record. And then they recreated it live, usually really well.
Well, he played in a huge drum kit, and huge drum kits are sometimes an affectation. In his case, no, because he's using the entire kit, and it's not like just something to look cool up there on stage.
Right. Yeah, I think the drummer for I've seen a couple drummers who have kits that big, but they're playing basically, grunge light. So Nickelback, their drummer has a huge drum kit. He's not playing Tom Sawyer or anything like that. But yeah, it wasn't pretense, because he was probably the least pretentious guy in music. He was a very studious. He studied everything. He studied literature. He studied film. He studied art. Whenever he went to, I read an interview, whenever he went to a city, he always visited his art museum, like almost every time. He wanted to explore the city, but also to connect himself with other forms of art and artists. He read a lot. He wrote 7 books. So though he was among the elitist of elite drummers, and he devoted a lot of his life to that, he also explored and investigated a lot of other areas, not just art, but history. He traveled a lot. He absorbed a lot of other cultures. Philosophy, yeah. So he was, they called him the professor, but he was beyond that. He was, and it wasn't until I read a lot of that stuff over the weekend that I realized that it was a bigger loss than just a drummer in a band.
Right. And the band is progressive. Progressive rock is something that always is going to dance around the area of pretense, because they explore grand areas. There's no question about that, be it mysticism or whatever. And he was the primary lyricist for the band, so he's going to explore things that interested him, and it wasn't going to be Joey falls in love.
No, a lot of it was just, personal identity and alienation, and the struggle to stay alive and dealing with your personal demons. And, he went through just an egregious tragedy in his life. Within a year, his daughter died in a car accident. She was 18. And then his wife, who'd been dealing with cancer for a year or so before that, she died within a year. He said in one interview he thinks she just gave up because she was so overwhelmed with grief and sorrow that she just felt like, I don't want to be here anymore. So within a year he had to deal with that, and it took him years to get through it. He eventually remarried and had another child. But and he talked about taking time off to just trying to figure out how he was going to deal with this new life that was thrust upon him. And it made it into his lyrics. He addressed some of it in some of their songs. But yeah, he was, and to go to their music, yes, I listened to some, the progressive rock bands I listened to, I didn't really start listening to it until I was in college, and a roommate who was a big Yes fan, so I got into them. But my brother had Fragile, that record with, that had the Roundabout on it, because that was on FM radio. So I knew them. I knew a little bit about Yes, but really got into their catalog. But then early Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. But when it came to Rush, too formidable for me, and I didn't get his voice. And it was just, they were speaking a language I was illiterate in. So, but I came around to listen to them here and there, especially when they were coming to town, and I reviewed them. And so just sort of gauged their music and what they were trying to do, and got used to or acknowledged what they were trying to do, and sort of was able to discern the forms of the songs. And, really, really, it's very intellectual, very creative. I'm not going to say a lot of it's very warm.
Right.
Which is what turns a lot of people off. And the structures are very abnormal. So if you're looking for something familiar, you're not going to find it. But a lot of people don't want that. They want surprises, and they want to go places they haven't been taken before. And that's what I think they did to a lot of their fans.
We've talked about this a lot, and, I'm sort of with you on Rush. I came to appreciate them more later in life when my best friend's Curtis Seabolt of Sports Radio 810 WHB, that's his favorite band. Rush is a lot of people's favorite band. But then if you're not in that category, sometimes you don't much like them at all. I did have trouble with Geddy Lee's voice. I really like a couple of 3 of their songs, Limelight, Tom Sawyer. But they weren't trying to make it simple, and they succeeded in that. And then just when you would watch concerts or something like that, I never saw them live, you just can't help but appreciate the musicianship, even if you don't like the quote-unquote songs themselves.
Right, and they were pilloried the first couple of records. The rock critics just hated them.
Right.
Because it had no context. Like, what is this? What are we supposed to do with this? We can't sing along to this. It had no context, and it made very little sense. But, eventually they developed such a feverish fan base who got what they did, or were so excited by what they did, they bought every record and listened to every word. And yes, they are. I don't want to say their fans. To say they remind me of like Deadheads is a little that's not accurate because those are different kind of fans for different reasons. But they are loyal and they are fierce. And,
right.
If you don't critique the band objectively and rationally, if it's just you're going to hear from them in spades.
Well, it's maybe one of the first nerd bands.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's safe to say.
I think that not that all their fans were nerds or something, but it seemed to be they were speaking in many of their songs to people who had felt that they were outsiders, that they had been that they weren't fitting in society.
Marginalized.
Getty Lee was kind of a funny-looking guy up there, for instance, and I think a lot of people that resonated with a lot of people.
Right. Well, I noticed a lot of Rush fans are also Tool fans. Kind of the same experience live. It's not. It's progressive. It's theatrical, and it's not for someone with strictly mainstream taste at all. There's this, I think, stereotype that 99.9% of their fans are men, but that's not the case. When I go to shows, there's plenty of women who like them. I mean, obviously they're a small minority, but it's, I think, people who don't want just your average run-of-the-mill, 3-4 chord rock song, pop song, and want to go to a different place in their music. And there's a science fiction element to them. That maybe it's not explicit, but it's implicit. But I think there's this sort of fantasy to their music that really appeals to some people. And I mean, if you're not into that, you're not going to connect. But I would always connect with his drumming, which is, by kind of overwhelms, at least visually, because you watch him.
Right. Yeah. When you go to when you see a concert or go to a concert, like I said, I've never seen them live, but I've seen plenty of live shows. You watch him more than you watch anybody else. At least I do.
The only thing to watch. I mean, the other two don't do a whole lot. But yeah, he's like the epicenter of the band. He's and so there's this observational aspect to going to their shows. So, but you see people playing air guitar all night. So, but it's a different involvement. It's instead of like sort of disappearing into a Springsteen song the way you might, and you remember where you heard it, or this is more, you're more present and you're watching them execute this really sophisticated idea.
And also, I think they were helped by, over time, people realized that they seemed to be, although serious maybe, especially in Neil Peart's case, normal, nice people. And, I guess sort of like people's stereotype of Canadians.
Right. Well, they were all pretty humble, In every interview I've seen with them, I've never talked to any of them, but yes, not, they don't act like rock stars. They didn't act like rock stars in the slightest. And he, more than any, because he didn't want to be the spokesman. He didn't really want to do media or press. He was happy to be involved in the things in his life that he loved and, go out on stage when he needed to. And other than that, he was just Neil, I guess.
Right, and when somebody passes at a relatively young age, 67, it is a tragedy. But unless you're talking about somebody in their 20s or 30s, he lived a reasonably full life. Certainly we could have been blessed with him playing the drums for 15 more years. But when somebody has a great body of accomplishment, be it in theater, cinema, or music, I always feel like that they've created something that's going to live on forever. So you don't necessarily need them. We'd love to have them there, but you don't need to have them there.
Right. I mean, just reading and seeing all the tributes to him, he left the world in a much better place. I mean, he made the world a better place, and not just because of his music, but because of who he was. And one of the reasons he was such a great drummer is because he was so committed to everything he did. He didn't want to do it, halfway. He went full on, and he's going to be remembered for that. And that's what a better way to go than to, prompt this outpouring of respect and love.
No doubt about that. And when people are enjoying their music. They do it for a variety of reasons, and they can do it on a grand scale or they can do it on a smaller scale. That's what we'll talk about next. Some of the great shows around Kansas City coming up in the next week or so. We always do that, and Tim Finn is a great outlet for that, be it In Kansas City Magazine, here at Danny Clinkscale's Reasonably Irreverent Commentary, or indeed at 90.9 The Bridge on Thursdays at 4 o'clock with John Hart. It's always a pleasure doing that with him, and we'll do more and give you some places to go and things to see coming up next.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, you know, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. Are you thinking of starting a new business? Does your current business feel stuck? Or are you just trying to grow what you already have? Running a business is a lot of work, and it takes the right team to make it all happen. If you're looking to grow your business, call my friends Ben and Greg over at Fuego Consulting. They put together a company that can help you reach your business goals. Whether you're looking to get online, build a social media strategy, or rebrand your business, they can help. Call Fuego at 816-663-9695 or visit them online at fuegoconsulting.com. Fuego Consulting. Let's grow your business together.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyClinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back with Tim Finn. He's our guest every other Wednesday here on Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday at Danny Clinkscale's Reasonably Irreverent Commentary. It's presented by Cinematic Visions. And let's give you a taste of some of the things you might want to enjoy coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow night at Knuckleheads, the latest of 8,000 shows you can enjoy at Knuckleheads during the course of the year. The Hillbenders, very interesting group that mixes country, rock, Americana, and maybe generally best known for their interpretation of Tommy, turning it into a bluegrass opry, and approved by Pete Townsend, but they do their own stuff too, and well.
Right, well, they did, they were pretty well known before they did the Tommy thing as a sort of, I guess they call themselves a progressive acoustic band because they're all acoustics. They're from Springfield, right out of Springfield, so down in the Ozark region, and so they were got to be a pretty well known and established.
Won some extensive awards and some
at the
prestigious
Bluegrass
awards.
Festival, which is a huge festival, and they weren't traditional bluegrass, but they sort of jazzed it up and added different elements. And then I guess it was back in 2012 or so ish. I'm not sure what the year. There was a guy named Louis Meyer who was the founder of the South by Southwest Music Festival, and Louis moved to Kansas City to launch the Folk Alliance here in Kansas City. I got to know Louis really well. Great guy, a lot of good music ideas, a great musician himself, and he turned over the reins of the Folk Alliance to the current director, Angus Finnan. Louis moved back to Austin, and then one day he just dropped dead of a heart attack. It was awful. It was just really tragic because he was a great mind, but this was ended up being his final project. He had this idea. He thought the Hillbenders would be the band to do it. They did it. They sort of debuted it here in Kansas City down at the Westin during the Folk Alliance. I saw one of the first performances. It was mesmerizing. It was so good. I went in dubious,
right.
But they approached it perfectly, and it took off. They made a DVD, and they took it all over the place, and it did really well. And yeah, they were in Nashville once when The Who was playing, well, this version of The Who, and Pete Townsend had heard about it and invited him to a Who show, and then afterwards they got together, and he just basically said, I really think this is great, and I'm honored to be associated with it. So they did that for several years, but they're back on the road, and they've decided to go back to what they did at first, and they're doing their original stuff. They just released a record called The Hillbenders. It's their 4th or 5th studio record, and these are songs that they've been playing, had already been playing live, so they went in. Apparently the recording of this record took maybe a week because they've been woodshedding those songs so long. So it's got a really organic live feel to it. So they'll be doing that, and I'm sure they'll throw in probably a couple or few Who songs, but they're a really good, really, really good tight band. They've been together since, same original members for about 10 years. So if you like music that sounds anything like, Americana, bluegrass, country, by all means, go see them.
Well, if a band is sort of trying to reestablish what they did before, I guess one of the best ways is to call your 4th or 5th album just by the name of the band.
Self-titled,
again. Yeah. Self-titled again.
Because they hadn't done that yet, yeah.
Right. On Friday at Record Bar, Brass and Bougie with New Black City, spelled in an interesting fashion.
Right. That's two different bands.
Two different bands, yes. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that show.
The headliners are Brass and Bougie, and Brass and Bougie is this... it's a project that was started by 3 guys who are... All 3 are very brilliant at what they do. One of them is from here, Kemet Coleman. He's a producer and a rapper and MC, and the other 2 guys are not from here. Marcus Lewis is from Georgia. He, I think he grew up in Atlanta, went to school in Atlanta. Is a jazz trombonist, really, really good world-class jazz trombonist. He was part of Janelle Monáe's backup band for years, so that's how good he is. He moved to Kansas City, and also Ryan Jamal Lewis, who performs as Kadesh Flow. I don't think there's much he doesn't do. He plays trombone also. He's a hip hop genius in this nerdcore world, with animation and all this stuff.
Right.
I don't really understand or know enough about to explain, but so just 3 really super creative and ambitious and really talented guys got together, and Brass and Bougie is the combination of Marcus Lewis's big band, so it's big band jazz and hip hop, and it's amazing. It's just
it sounds cool.
It's very lively. Sometimes the size of the band behind them fluctuates. It could be 9, it could be 10, it could be 20. It just kind of depends on who signed up that day. But it will be like nothing you haven't seen. And if you think you have an aversion to hip hop, go watch this. It'll change your mind. And then the openers are this quartet from Kansas City called New Black City, and I've not seen them. I've watched the video, and it's this really nice, sort of bewitching combination of the neo soul and hip hop and R&B, and it's very groovy, super satiny and laid back, and really, it's a perfect lineup.
That's cool. And Knuckleheads the same night, Stoney LaRue, Red Dirt, Texas Country Range. Of course, that's a well-habitated area, and apparently he mines that very well.
Yeah, it's not modern country. It's sort of Texas country, outlaw country. Lyrics are important. The instrumentation it's very country fiddle. Sometimes there's an accordion, maybe. I'm not sure about him, but it's very focused on songwriting and not cliche songwriting. It's about writing about where you came from and, matters of growing up, your environment, romance, heartache, all that stuff. So it's if you like good songwriting and you like music with sort of an Oklahoma, Texas bent twang, this is it.
What's you referenced the Yellow House? What is
so there was, there's Cross Canadian Ragweed is a band from down there that was sort of there's some artists who's been. I mean, I guess the roots of this go back to you can go back to Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, is sort of where it started. But Red Dirt and specifically was guys like Jason Bowen and Cody Canada, who was Cross Canadian Ragweed. So those two, Bowen and Canada, and then Stan LaRue lived in this house in Stillwater that just became fabled because that's where
people would go and write songs together.
Yeah,
and stuff.
sort of. Yeah, from what I could gather, I couldn't find a lot about it, but I've inferred that was sort of the epicenter of this genre for a while.
Next Tuesday, there's a couple nice shows, too, at Record Bar, the Delvin Lamar Organ Trio, and I'll tell you that I am quite a big fan of Hammond B3 jazz trios. A great one plays at the Green Lady Room, Green Lady Lounge. It's just to me, it's a way almost for people who don't necessarily enjoy jazz, and they're maybe not like they should. They don't have any obligation, but it's an entree. I think a different kind of entree too, because you can do so many things with it.
Yeah. So this guy, I hadn't heard of him until I saw this show. He was sort of spinning his wheels in Seattle for a long time. Could play anywhere. People knew him there, and I guess he was complaining to his wife, I'm like, this is all I'm going to be. I kind of want to get out of here,
right,
and come back, when I want to. And she said, "Well, all right, you focus on the music. I'm going to focus on your business." And she dug in, and after a couple of years, she'd found a way to book him regionally in the Northwest, and then he expanded, put out a record, and then he's been all over the country and played in Europe. And they're a trio. I guess they really came together when they got this guitar players. What's his name? Jimmy James.
Jimmy James.
Yeah. Who apparently he was like he pulled the band together. Like he was what had been missing until he came along. And they're really good. So he plays Hammond B3. They mix. It's jazz and R&B. They're influenced as most people would be if you're doing that by Booker T and the MGs. So there's a lot of that in their sound. So I've watched some videos. It's really very cool, groovy jazz. Yeah, but soulful, very soulful.
Right.
And the openers are like that. Chris Hazelton's Boogaloo 7. Chris also plays Hammond B3, so he's really good at it. He studied under Everett Devan, who's a master of the B3 from Kansas City, and they play Green Lady a lot. So if you love the Hammond B3, this is a night for you. You'll probably get good 3.5 hours of it at least.
And it, a lot of times, and I think that's, frankly, I've seen this band twice at Green Lady Lounge, and I don't know their name because I haven't seen the start. This could be them for all I know. But you can do a lot of different things and incorporate. It's sort of like sampling a little bit popular songs and turning them into jazz riffs and things like that. So it's it's just a lot of fun to me.
Well, Chris Hazelton, the Boogaloo 7 put out a record last year that's just outstanding. He gave me a copy on vinyl, and I listened to it a lot. They introduce horns, so it's brassy. It's very full-bodied, but it is groovy as heck. It's very dance-oriented.
And a different genre of music again, more of a Allman Brothers style, in No Accident as well, but influenced by the blues and other things, is Tedeschi Trucks Band, husband and wife band. Susan Tedeschi was raised in Boston, and she was classically, went to the Berklee School of College of Music. Each of these players, and Derek Trucks is her husband, and he is a nephew of Derek Trucks, from Butch Trucks, from who was the drummer for the Allman Brothers. And what's funny is Derek Trucks kind of looks like Dwayne Allman. So, I mean, that's just true. Yeah. So these guys, this band came together. They played as solo artists for a long time. Then he was playing with the reconstructed Allman Brothers until they stopped playing. And they have got a great reputation as putting on a big show and a big time show.
Right.
They're at the Music Hall on Tuesday night as well.
Right, which is odd because they played at the Midland at least twice and sold out the Midland. Like maybe those were seated shows. That could be why they moved it to the Music Hall, though the Midland can hold 3,000 people if they do GA up front. So I'm guessing they were doing seated shows, which puts it down to like 2,000. The Music Hall holds like 2,300, so that might be why they moved it over there. But when I looked Sunday, there were about maybe 3 dozen tickets left. So they draw a big crowd here, and for a good reason. Yeah, the band is 10 people. She's got a voice that's like sort of some Janis Joplin and Bonnie Raitt. It's very soulful. She studied voice at Berkeley. A very expressive voice. She's also a very good guitar player, but he's sort of off the charts guitar player.
Right.
I think, I mean, these Rolling Stone lists are what you make of them. I don't agree with a lot of them, but they had him in number 11, which is really high. I mean, and I couldn't argue with it. And it was Robert Randolph, who's amazing, Sacred Steel, pedal steel player, wrote it and was talking about how amazing Derek Trucks is as a guitar player. So it wasn't just the editors; it was someone who was invested in this guy. It was saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely one of the best guitar players in the world." So you get that, but it's a show.
Have you seen them?
No.
No.
I watch videos. It's a show, and
if you're going to put the investment, you clearly care about what you're not that other people don't care what they're doing, but if you're willing to put in the investment of trotting a 12-piece band out there, counting yourselves,
it's 10,
or 10 including them, or
I think so. Yeah.
But I mean, even
Still,
10, that's a lot of
background
people
singers,
if you're not playing arenas or something.
Sure, but if if you come from the Allman Brothers, they didn't scrimp on size, and they were all about that. So so it's very. It is Allman Brothers. It's very Southern, and it's soulful, and it's blues, and it's rock blues, and that may sound tiresome and cliche to some people, but for some reason there's a flavor to their music that separates it.
Well, it's for instance, what the Allman Brothers did can be done very poorly. I mean, long extended jams and things like that, and it's all about whether you have the excellence of musicianship to make it go.
And you spend your time efficiently. You're not just jamming for the sake of it, which is where I get lost in bands like Widespread Panic,
right?
Because a 12-minute song, 6 minutes of it is a guitar solo, or it feels like it. I can't. My attention snaps. So
right,
and I think they're a little more orchestrated and a little more efficient in how they jam and how they improvise and how they do their solos. So yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but raves about their live shows.
I think this fits in with what we talked about at the beginning with Neil Peart and what you talked about with solos. It's got to be about the song and the melody of that song, not just showing off. I mean, or that's where it loses me. I mean, somebody can be a great player, but if they're doing a solo that has nothing to do with the context of the song they're in, or a drum solo per se, same thing.
Well, that's what everyone says about Ringo, how his drumming was so elemental to the Beatles because he was a musical drummer. Ringo added to the song. It wasn't just keeping time most of the time. He was doing little things that you notice in the song, and you expect to hear them. They're like a harmony, a vocal harmony, or some guitar line. Ringo did stuff with the drums that made the songs better. And Neil Peart did that on a grander scale,
right,
for sure. But that was also one of his gifts. So, and that's what I think. If I watch someone solo, and I can hear embedded in the improvisation, like the roots of the song, and they're taking it, then I'm online,
Yeah.
But if it looks like they're just doing calisthenics,
that's such a wonderful way to put it,
check out,
and a great way to wrap things up. Tim, always a pleasure. It's always a great musical journey, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Okay, see you, Danny.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like the law offices of Kenneth McRae, developing a unique strategy for your family law case. Divorce can be civil law, not civil war.